Airports are some of the most busy transportation hubs in the world, with many different types of vehicles being used all day long to run things smoothly. Today, we're taking a look at the top 15 coolest airport vehicles. Number 15. Snowblower. One of the biggest problems an airport can face is being subjected to a thick blanket of snow, and it's something that happens on a daily basis in some countries. Those less used to it will often have no choice but to wait for it to melt, which will inevitably lead to cancellations. But when it's enough of an interruption, they'll be able to invest in some serious heavy equipment to move the snow so quickly that passengers won't experience any delays at all. While there are many types of vehicles that can perform this role, the current largest snowblower available is called the TV2200, and it was designed specifically for use at airports by the Overaasen Snow Removal Company. Fitted with 2 engines, this powerful vehicle can produce more than 2,200 horsepower, and with one engine dedicated to driving it so it can power through snowdrifts, and the other engine dedicated to the snow-blowing machinery, it's able to shift as much as 12,000 tons of snow per hour and blow it to a distance of up to 115 feet away, which is more than enough to clear a runway. Number 14. Follow Me cars. Airplane pilots will often find themselves visiting a number of different airports around the world every week, and it would be impossible for them to remember the exact routes of each gate to the runway. While most airports have markings on the tarmac to help direct them, they also employ a series of vehicles called Follow Me cars that will be driven in front of some planes so they know exactly where to go. Easy to spot with neon markings, and normally with an LED board mounted on top to send messages to the pilots, you might expect these cars to be nothing more than a basic model, but sometimes they're surprisingly high-powered and pretty cool to see. Probably the one to watch out for the most, though, is at Bologna Airport in Italy, because it's located just 16 miles from the headquarters of a famous Italian supercar manufacturer. One of the Follow Me cars you may see on the tarmac is a Lamborghini Huracan Pro. The 631 horsepower car is painted in Verde Turbine matte green with high visibility orange graphics, meaning no pilot's gonna miss it. Of course, with aircraft limited to a speed of around 18 miles per hour when taxiing, the Huracan is unlikely ever to make use of its 202 mile per hour top speed. But you surely do have to wonder if airport staff take the opportunity to push it to its limits at night or in the downtime between the last planes leaving that night. Number 13. DeIcing Trucks. During cold temperatures, it's not just snow that airlines have to watch out for. In freezing conditions, an aircraft left standing still on the tarmac for several hours will often become covered in ice, something that happens when the moisture in the air becomes frozen on the mainly metallic exterior. This is a serious safety hazard because every part of a plane is designed to be aerodynamic, and the presence of a block of ice can seriously compromise this, or it could potentially freeze a movable part such as a flat or rudder shut. To deal with this when it happens, airports have de-icing trucks, but these are far more advanced than simply applying the type of liquid you'll put in your car's windshield on a frosty morning. Made up of an extendable arm that can be lifted and pointed at any part of even the largest of aircrafts, the nozzles spray de-icing fluid that not only contain chemicals to lower its freezing point, but also heated by generators on the vehicle. This means that it makes light work of the ice that's already present and melts it away, but will also leave a thin layer on the surfaces of the aircraft, which will help prevent ice forming before it has to take off. This is why they'll normally only spray the plane once the passengers and cargo is already on board, and it only has that preventative effect for a limited period, which is referred to as the holdover time, meaning the plane will never go within a few minutes, otherwise it will have to be sprayed again. Number 12. VIP Gate Transfer Cars. As with many areas of life, not all passengers through an airport are treated the same, and the more you pay for the flight, the more benefits you'll be privy to. While in the airport terminal, this will mean things like a dedicated security line to shorten the queues, or a comfortable lounge to wait in before the plane is ready for boarding. But one of the perks you may not be aware of is how you travel from the gate to the aircraft. There are a number of situations where the plane will be across the tarmac, and you'll normally either have to walk down a long pathway to reach it, or perhaps even taken by bus to where it's waiting. But at some airports, the VIPs have executive cars waiting to take them to their seats before anyone else gets close to the aircraft, and they're some of the coolest cars in the airport. If you're flying on Lufthansa, for example, you may find yourself being driven in one of the latest models of Mercedes-Benz cars. But arguably, the real treat is if you're a VIP passenger traveling with Delta Airlines, because at some airports, you'll either be taken to your plane or picked up from it in a luxurious Porsche. Number 11. Adhesion monitor. Aircraft are highly specialized vehicles that, while they're designed to work in a range of different conditions that they're likely to be subjected to, they still have a number of operational limitations, many of which affect them when they're on the ground. With relatively small tires for their overall size and weight, it's important that the rubber is able to grip the tarmac they're traveling along, and airports have a special vehicle to make sure that everything will function properly. Known as an adhesion monitor, there are two versions that airports may use, one where the equipment is installed within a trailer, and one that's a dedicated truck with the mechanisms fitted inside. Either way, they essentially work by having a transmission arm that can be lowered down onto the surface with a wheel at the end, and a belt drive or chains are used to generate resistance in the gears to test how much resistance is given from the tarmac. Computer systems on board allow operators to view and track all of the friction data that's been collected in real time, and this is checked against the airport's guidance for acceptable levels. The presence of oil or too much water, for example, would seriously impact the adhesion, and a vehicle like this will pick up on that and mean the runway is closed until crews can clean up the problem. Number 10. Fuel pumping truck. Of all the ground support activities that can take place at an airport, arguably the most important are the refueling trucks. After all, without any fuel, the planes aren't going anywhere. Depending on the airport, you'll usually see one of two types of vehicles performing this role. The first of which is a self-propelled fuel truck that's similar to the ones you'll see filling the tanks at a gas station. A Boeing 747, as an example, holds about 48,400 gallons, or around 180,000 liters of fuel, and burns around 5 gallons or 23 liters per mile traveled, meaning it'll need 20,000 gallons or 76,000 liters for a 4,000-mile journey. Not only do the trucks have to pump the fuel in at quite some considerable rate to supply enough within a reasonable time for the plane's turnaround, but for a long journey, it'll take a few of them to provide it all. As an alternative, the larger airports actually have a network of fuel pipes hidden beneath the tarmac and with access points near all of the gates where the planes are serviced. In these cases, the fuel truck you'll see will be much smaller and is simply the pumping machinery that takes the fuel out of the in-ground pipeline and pushes it up into the aircraft. Number 9. Baggage handler. Airports are, in essence, a huge exercise in logistics, where passengers have to be directed to the right part of the terminal to board their planes. But it's arguably an even more complex job to ensure that their baggage is taken to the right place and put on the right aircraft. It's not simple enough to deliver everything to the plane to be put on, as weight management is crucial to safe and efficient flights. Once you check your baggage and after it's been weighed, it passes through a network of conveyors that eventually take it to the loading bays, where they're put with similar weight and size baggage on a small cart. These carts are then connected together, and a single baggage tractor is used to pull an entire train of carts to the correct aircraft. Rather than simply being a basic vehicle, they're actually far more advanced than you might expect. First, a great deal of design goes into driver comfort to ensure a worker can continuously drive from plane to plane without needing as many brakes to stretch. And they also have features such as hydraulic steering, vacuum-assisted hydraulic brakes, telematics packages, and front and rear towing couplers, which means they're able to transport increasing loads and increase their overall efficiency. Number 8. Lavatory service vehicle. When you're transporting hundreds of people in a self-contained vehicle in the sky for a number of hours, there's one bodily function that's impossible to avoid: the need to go to the bathroom. We're obviously used to being able to perform whatever business is necessary while we're airborne, but a lot of planning is needed to ensure this is possible. Despite urban myths that you may have heard, aircraft aren't simply allowed to release any waste into the sky, as it would be too great a risk of causing contamination or, in the worst case, hitting someone on the ground. There are occasional instances when things go wrong of so-called blue ice impacts, whereby bio-waste and disinfectant leaks from a plane, freezes, and causes damage, but normally the waste is removed when the aircraft is at the airport. Specifically kept separate from the vehicles that are responsible for emptying and refilling the usable water tanks on the plane, the lavatory service vehicles empty the waste tanks and carry a blue liquid, which is a mixture of water and disinfectant, that's then used to refill the lavatory tanks. Operating one of these vehicles may well be one of the least appealing jobs at an airport, but it's surely one of the most important roles. Number 7. Belt loader. The quicker a plane is able to turn around, the more profit there is for airline companies and airport operators. And one of the potentially longest parts of preparing for departure is loading all of the baggage into the hold. With heavy suitcases from most passengers and further cargo also being carried, specialized vehicles have been designed to lift everything up into the openings of the hold itself. Known as a belt loader, there are several different designs that you may see at an airport. They range from hand-operated ones to large dedicated vehicles, and they're essentially made up of a flat platform that lifts up at an angle to the hold and has a conveyor belt that carries the baggage up from ground level. They may well be one of the most commonly seen airport ground vehicles, and we think very little of them while we're waiting at the gate to board. But the invention of belt loaders has significantly improved the speed of operations at airports, which has made air travel as relatively efficient as it is. Number 6. Shuttle bus. One of the things airport planners have to think about is the way that passengers are moved around, from the locations of the gates in relation to where you check in, to the method of which you'll actually reach the aircraft. Quite often, you'll have to board a bus to either take you to your plane or pick you up after arriving to take you to the terminal. But you'll have probably noticed that these vehicles are widely different to the ones that are used for public transport networks elsewhere. That's because buses normally have to be designed to be road legal, with specific width and safety requirements, but the rules are different when they only operate on the tarmac of an airport. Known as apron buses, they're usually much longer and wider, with far more space dedicated to baggage storage and designed to carry many more people. There's little seating since you're usually only on one for a few minutes, and you may notice there's a driver cab at each end, so they don't need wide turning circles. And they're usually also fitted with flashing beacons and covered in bright colors to ensure they're easily noticed by other vehicles and aircraft using the same tarmac. Number 5. Air stairs. Modern aircraft often have stairs built into their doors that can unfurl when it's time for passengers to board or disembark. But for older designs or for larger planes, either a sky bridge is required or passenger boarding stairs. The doors of the commercial ground aircraft usually range from 5 to 20 feet above the ground, so airports need to provide a way to safely cover that distance. Each airport tends to have stairs of its own design, and they'll either be towed into place or be completely self-propelled vehicles that can simply be driven up to the aircraft. As each aircraft model is designed slightly differently, air stairs are normally adjustable to accommodate a range of heights and may also have various other features such as canopies, heating, and lighting to ensure passenger comfort no matter the outside conditions. And extra touches like red carpets if they're handling VIPs. They're a classic and traditional type of vehicle that have been seen at airports since the first commercial flights, but that doesn't take away from how cool they are. And after a long journey, seeing one approach your aircraft is probably the greatest sense of anticipation you'll experience throughout the whole flight. Number 4. Catering auto lift. When you're traveling for several hours on an aircraft, you're reliant on the cabin crew and environment for all your needs, from entertainment to food and drink, so the aircraft needs to have plenty of supplies for each journey. This is one of the biggest logistical challenges faced by any airport, because food is prepared at an off-site facility and needs to be transported to the aircraft on the apron without spoiling, especially as an outbreak of food poisoning mid-flight is far more problematic than it would be on the ground. The answer to this is a catering auto-lift vehicle, and it's responsible for transporting the food and drinks from the kitchen to each aircraft. With meticulous timing, carts are loaded onto the vehicle within a specific time frame of the expected aircraft departure and store them in a temperature-controlled platform. When they reach the aircraft, the entire platform can then be raised by up to 20 feet or about 6 meters on hydraulic jacks, and this brings the heavy stock to cabin level, where it can be simply wheeled onto a plane and kept at the right temperature by the aircraft's onboard systems. Airline food may not be the most popular cuisine for anyone, but without these specialized ground vehicles, things would undoubtedly be far, far worse. Number 3. Ground power unit. One of the things that you probably never think about with aircraft is where the electrical power comes from. In a similar way to how the battery of a car recharges while the engine's running, the onboard power requirements during the flight are provided by the jet engines. And this is why you'll notice that after landing, the pilot will usually leave one running so that everything still works properly. Once it's stopped though, and when people will be on the tarmac around the plane, the engine has to be switched off, but there's still a power requirement for things like the announcement system, the lights, the refrigerators, and the systems on the flight deck. That's why you'll often see a ground power unit driving up to and connecting with the aircraft to act as an external power source. While aircrafts have an auxiliary power unit that's normally in the tail, these tend to be extremely noisy and aren't exactly efficient, so a ground-based solution is far more preferable. This doesn't just help with maintaining the electrical systems, but it's also crucial when it's time for the plane to depart again, because that electricity is needed for all the pre-flight checks and to be able to turn the jet engines back on again. Far from being the type of generator used in other avenues of life, the ones at airports are unique in that they provide a standardized 400 Hz frequency as opposed to the 50 or 60 Hz used elsewhere. Number 2. Pushback tug. When their engines are on, planes are able to move along the tarmac under their own power, but this uses a lot of fuel, and moving backwards out of the gate isn't something they're explicitly designed for. Instead, it's normally far more practical and cost-efficient to use a pushback tug, which is a vehicle specifically used for moving aircraft. Planes are, however, heavy and in extremely awkward shape for most vehicles created for heavy lifting, so the ones used at airports are a unique design. With a low-slung body, they're able to get underneath the nose of the aircraft and attach a tow bar to the landing gear, and their use avoids the pilot of the plane needing to switch on the engines until the last moment. To push or pull an aircraft requires a huge amount of power, though, which pushback tugs are by far the strongest of all airport ground vehicles. Those used with Boeing 747s or Airbus A380s, for example, will typically weigh around 60 tons and have a drawbar pull of 75,000 pounds of force. Number 1. Fire trucks. Despite being one of the safest ways to travel, the fact that flying by plane involves large aircraft taking off and landing on a runway while full of highly flammable fuel means that there's always a potential risk of an accident. And it's at the stage of flight when there's the highest chance of a problem. Airports are therefore equipped with some serious machinery to quickly respond to an event, and in a similar way to the other ground vehicles, the fact that they don't have to adhere to size and legal restrictions for use on public roads in the airport area, they're usually mounted on a 4x4 or 6x6 or even an 8x8 chassis. With huge storage tanks on board for water and firefighting foam, they differ from the fire trucks you'll see in your local neighborhood by having a joystick-controlled nozzle fixed to the roof. Often employing the latest technologies such as twin nozzles that mix agents more suited to extinguishing jet fuel fires much quicker, they're designed to be able to spray as much as 1,300 gallons or 5,000 liters of liquid per minute to targets up to 230 feet away. Additionally, some of these fire trucks may even be equipped with a device called a snozzle, which is a reinforced nozzle that can be used to pierce through the fuselage of an aircraft to deliver firefighting foam directly into a fire that's within the cabin or cargo areas. Alongside these main crash tenders that are used, there are various other emergency response vehicles that you may also see on standby at an airport, such as fire trucks more similar to those used by normal fire departments, and rapid intervention vehicles that are first on the scene of an accident to begin operations before the heavier vehicles arrive. Watch our Vehicles playlist for more top 15 videos about amazing vehicles. Sit back, relax, and binge watch all of our best vehicle videos.